I am deeply honored and humbled and proud to welcome to the stage Adrienne Maree Brown.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Maree Brown. It's so nice to, I love all growls and sounds like that. Wow, y'all look beautiful. And there's a lot of you. And I want to, before I start anything, I want you to all just actually look around, really look around and take in that in this moment of real hardship and oppression and trauma, that y'all are choosing a different way. So just like look at the people at your table and the other tables, and there's a ballroom full of people. And I keep talking about Harriet Tubman lately, like Harriet Tubman's been on my mind. And I just think about Harriet Tubman, like this is about the number of people that she got free, if it was all in one room at one time, right? And just thinking about like what it would have been like if she had started out with this many people all going out to get this many, each person getting this many people free. I just think sometimes we're always operating at such a large scale, and if we bring it down and actually look around, it's like, oh, we're doing all right. For the species, it's hard for our species right now, but at this granular level, at this one-on-one level, we're doing okay. So for folks who are open to it, I'd like to open with Octavia's words as sort of a grounding meditation. Octavia Butler was a Black science fiction writer. She wrote 12 novels and a collection of short stories, and I'm going to share, basically she's one of the core pieces of the lineage of everything I do with my whole life. I'm a fangirl of her ancestral spirit. So, yes, that's how I feel like whenever someone says Octavia's name, everyone should have like a Beyonce level response. They're like, yes, oh my God! Like that. That's how I respond. So she deserves it. So what I want you to do is just get yourself centered in your chair, in yourself, and just notice how you are in your body this morning. All right? You might close your eyes to do this. Sort of turn inward. Like, am I hydrated? Have I eaten enough of the right foods? This morning I had breakfast with someone who got all the good foods and I got all the not good foods at the same breakfast scenario. So just notice, like, were you the one who made those choices this morning? Are you well rested? Not just on a last night level, but on a generally in life, I'm taking good care of my sleep and my dream time. And not judging any of it. Just being with what is. Like, how am I surviving right now? How's my body self surviving? How's my heart self surviving? Am I in touch with, here's my grief, here's my joy, it's all happening. And into that, Octavia offers, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. So again, open up your eyes and look around at all these divine creatures around you who are wielding change. And imagine that someone at your table might be the one who breaks it open for everyone else. And you don't know who it is. You can't tell by looking. You might not even be able to tell by being friends with them. Like, oh, I didn't know you were a genius at getting people to heal from trauma. That's amazing. So I'm really honored to be with you all today. I was really compelled by, and I have continued to be compelled by all the choices made in the creation of this space. Looking through the booklet, landing into the space, there's just so much love and care and intention at every single step. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to the land here and to the water here, to the people of here. And then thank you to the folks who created this space for us. It really means a lot. And I was really excited because I'm like, we choose all of us is such a compelling invitation. I was like, okay, I can come there. I fit. And it's a compelling conversation because right now we're in this upheaval of all the harms, all the harms. So many of the harms are just getting exposed and unveiled. I said something last year. Well, I posted something on my Instagram last year, and it ended up going viral, and I didn't put my name on it, which I think was good. I think that's the universe being like, it's not about you, girl. But I said that things are not getting worse, they're getting uncovered, and that we must hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. And people are like, no, it's getting worse. It feels worse. And for me, I'm like, I think if it feels worse, that's a sign of how covered it was for you, right? This is why I do science fiction writing, and I always talk about the distinction between utopia and dystopia, and that I'm not trying to create utopias because they always sit on top of dystopias for someone. And I've never seen it done separately from that. I think it's something humans struggle with. But I'm trying to create something that's beyond a utopian or dystopian condition, and it means choosing all of us, and it means that we all do harm. And in this moment, with things getting uncovered, what we would rather be able to say is, you did harm. You did. And I did nothing. I'm good, right? It would be so nice if we had that, but I don't have that yet. The only people I've met who have it are in the 1-month-old range. After that, I'm like, I know you just pooped on purpose. That was harmful. The diaper wasn't on yet. That was not nice, But this idea that none of us are disposable, really finds its root in nature. In the natural world, everything has a use. Someone will eat it. Someone will use it for fuel. The ground will swallow it up. The ocean will turn it into a place for barnacles and coral reef it out. And, in the natural world, we see this over and over again. This is why I'm a huge mushroom fan. And whenever I say that, people are like, ooh, me too. And I'm like, all mushrooms are great mushrooms, except the poisonous ones. But mostly I'm talking about the way that mushrooms can detox anything. Like you put them in the soil and they will process whatever is there, even if it's chemical toxins in New Orleans after Katrina. The mushrooms will be like, I'll take it. I can use this, right? But how do we get like that with our human experience when what our recent socialization is, it's not our original ways, but what our recent socialization has been exile or entrap people, try to put them away from us and say that they don't deserve to be a part of society. They don't belong to us because we don't do harm. Those people do harm. And it allows us to individuate every single harm instead of stepping back and being able to see, oh, there's this massive system and we're participating in it and we're complicit in it. This past year, how many people after the election were like, I'm either moving or I'm not going to pay my taxes or fuck this system, right? And then how many people are still here, paid their taxes, and so far have not engaged the system very intimately? Yeah. So I want to say this because I'm like, I feel very much that anyone who's living in this country paying taxes in any way is very complicit in the most massive harms that are happening on the planet. And then inside of that, there's interpersonal harms, there's organizational harms, there's all this other stuff. How do we say no one is disposable when we're such harmful beings? How do we have compassion and love for each other and for ourselves? That's what I want to explore. You good with that? So, emergent strategy is my best offer into that void of overwhelming harmfulness of the human species. And it comes from a lot of places, but one of them, like I mentioned, is Octavia Butler. And she wrote in a novel called The Parable of the Sower and The Parable of the Talents. She basically wrote in a belief system. Sorry. Just because I can. They gave me a lavalier. Hold on. I know, just because I can. How's that? Ooh. How's that? You can sound me. I'm going to walk away from this thing. Oh, but my notes are over here. All right, y'all just tell me what to do. Stand back here. How does it sound on the lavalier versus this one? It's the same?
It sounds better.
It's better.
I think so.
All right, let's
But
do
I'm
that.
here.
How about for my friends in the back? Good? It's bad? It's better over here? All right, trying to serve the people. So this is better for my folks in the back. All right. See, we're not disposable, not even as listeners, okay? So Octavia wrote about this belief system called Earthseed, right? And Earthseed, the concept of it is that the destiny of human beings is to take root amongst the stars, that the experience of being on this planet is actually kind of a growing ground, almost like a womb, where we get all of our parts and we generate our capacities so that we can go off into the stars. Now, there's a lot of problems with this manifest destiny, right? It involves some colonialism. At the end of it, she actually names the ship the Christopher Columbus because she problematizes it, right? She's like, oh, wouldn't it be so great to get off this planet full of messy people, but you'd still be in a messy people situation and taking these messy people elsewhere. In the system, though, one of the things she talks about is that we have to get in right relationship with change, and that humans hate getting in right relationship with change. We really want we want to set it up and then have it stay that way. This is what's familiar to me. This is what I feel right with. But her system was like, that's not how the natural world works. That's not how our universe works. What we've come into is a system that is actually changing all the time. And until we get in right relationship with those changes, we're not going to be in right relationship with ourselves. And we won't be able to be in right relationship with each other. We'll be disappointed by each other. We'll be harmed by each other because people are going to be changing all the time. And I remember being so moved by this the first time I read it, which was back in high school. I grew up in a military environment. Military environment is like, we're not changing. We're wearing uniforms. We're running the same thing every morning. We're just like, everything is here. Everything is linear. We conquest in a linear way, right? We conquest from a hierarchical understanding of the world. When I read this, it turned my world upside down. This idea that actually everything is changing all the time and you can't control it. And you're not ever going to be in control of it. But you can shape it. If you actually take responsibility for the world that you're a part of, you can actually shape it. And in that shaping, we can do collectively. Actually shaping something individually very rarely makes a change that lasts for any period of time. It's all about what we do as the collective body. So I was like, boom, collective shaping change. Got it. That's my life path. It wasn't quite that clear. I was 19. I've had many boom moments. How many of you have had many boom moments and you're like, this is my life path. I found it. And then everything changes, right? Changes from external causes or changes from internal causes, right? So I want to share with you some more words of Octavia's. This, I feel like I keep telling people, emergent strategy in a nutshell is this, or emergent strategy in oh, hi. Great, thanks, hi. I'm talking a lot, huh? Okay. I'm always very aware. I'm like, I'm talking really fast. Let me know if I should slow it down, okay. I'm going to read you something from Octavia that I feel is emergent strategy in a nutshell. I also feel like if you have the book, and if you want a cheat sheet, if you're like most humans who don't read books anymore, which is a challenge when you write a book, is you're like, I know people don't really read books. I still need to say all these things in 300 pages. What to do, right? So you write a book, you put it out, you travel around, you talk about it. People don't read it, but they still like the ideas. And so I want to just invite you all into that. That's okay with me. If you don't read the book, that's fine. If you do want to know about the ideas in the book, though, pages 15, 41, and 42, boom, that's the whole thing. And 15 is mostly just a graphic, and it has these words of Octavia's, and then the other side. And then the facilitation training is going to talk about pages 41 and 42. So that's it. I did that on purpose because I really wanted to be how would I tweet, if I needed to just tweet the book? What would I do? So I was like, page 15 is very important. So here's what it says. All successful life is adaptable, opportunistic, tenacious, interconnected, and fecund. Understand this, use it, shape God. So I was reading Octavia Butler's work over and over again, and I thought that it was so interesting to me because it was young black female protagonist. And as you may have seen my sweatshirt today, for those who are not wearing glasses, it says, I'm rooting for everybody black. It's Issa Rae, who created the HBO series Insecure, said this when she was heading into I think we figured out Emmys. And I was like, yeah, exactly, black. And I've always been this way, since I was young, is I wanted to tap into an experience of blackness that was not just about the oppression and the harm and the trauma. That I don't want to feel like I'm bonded to black people because of trauma. I want to feel like, I'm bonded because of something else. I'm bonded and I'm rooting for blackness in the world as another force, as a beautiful force, as an equal force to any other force. Yeah. So I got excited when I saw all these young black protagonists in Octavia's books. But then as I kept reading it, she was tapping into something that goes deeper than any identity. She was tapping into a way of leading, and she sums it all up in those words. This is my PowerPoint, by the way. It's little sticky notes. She sums it all up. And so the way it's translated into the work, if you look on page 15 or if you just listen, is it's fractal, nonlinear, decentralized, adaptive, resilient, and it creates more possibilities. Right? And I'm going to just speak about each of those briefly. So adaptable, that you can actually adapt with change, not purely reactive, right? We can always be reactive, just reacting to whatever happens with no clear intention of where we want to go. And you can just react yourself all the way through your life. I didn't do that one, right? That wasn't me. Where's the sound friend? Who's the person who's handling sound? Am I good? It's okay? Hi. Thank you, sound friends. All right. So adaptive means we adapt with intention. We're trying to get somewhere. When birds are flocking and they're flying south, if a storm knocks them off by 50 miles or something, they're not just like, you know what, fuck it. I don't feel like going to Mexico anymore. I think we should just land here in Delaware and just huddle, right? They're like, no, we just have to figure out how to, we just still need to find fresh water. We need to get back on our path. And they feel it inside them. And so when I hear that, it makes me think, what is it that we feel inside us? What is it so compelling that it brings out the best of us, that it helps us go beyond what we're capable of? So adaptation with intention, I think our intention is around love, but I'll get to that later. But how do we make sure that we're constantly adapting to change? And the faster we can let go of I thought it was going to be this way. The faster we can let go of that and be like, it's this way. And how can I still get to justice and liberation and transformation this way, right? So that's the first piece. Fractal, which I love, fractal is basically all about scale, right? That the same patterns in the world, they from the smallest to the largest scale, you see the repetition of these patterns. Spirals in the waves, spirals on our fingertips, spirals of the shape of the very galaxy that we're a part of. Broccoli is also a miraculous thing. If you look at broccoli all the way down to the smallest aspect of the stem, you have the same shape repeated over and over again. We humans are fractals, right? We're little cells moving the whole body of our humanity all the time. And some of us are toxic cells, right? That doesn't mean we can't heal, regenerate, figure it out. But fractal says if we can't do this on the small scale, it's not going to happen on the large scale. So when we talk about the experiment of democracy, for instance, I often will ask people, and actually I'll ask you now, how many people here would say your immediate family functions as a really functional democracy? Yeah? Raise your hand, be proud. You're like, we vote, we make decisions, the budget is transparent, we are functioning. All right? How many people, if you add your extended family, so your racist uncle, your grandmother, your nieces, now you still, right, doing democracy? How many people are on your block? Right? No? I've lost you all. No, we got a blocker, one block. Okay, what about your whole community? Functional democratic process in your community. So I say this to say that then we look at the federal level and we're like, this democracy is not working. They don't know how to do government, right? And it's like, no, none of us do, right? We actually haven't spent our time doing government. We've spent our time doing capitalism and domination. So we've gotten really good at those things, and then we sort of flirt with democracy on the side. But we actually, who we elect is whoever lies the best to us, right? It's like, I told you the best story about yourself. We don't pay attention to actions that much. We don't actually track, well, what did you actually do? What do we actually want done, right? So small d democracy, I think about that as one of the main places where we need to practice our fractal thing. If we want it to happen on a large scale, we have to do it on a small scale. Transformative justice is also one of these, right? If you can't forgive your partner for putting the toilet paper roll on the wrong way, how are we supposed to build this up to a level that our whole society can do this, right? Nonlinear and iterative is the third one, nonlinear and iterative. So things don't happen in a linear way. We try to make them happen that way, and one of the ways we do that is we make 5-year strategic plans, right? We're like, here's the strategic plan. I figured it all out. We're going to do this, 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 and that. Here's the opportunities and the challenges of this moment, and based off of that, we're going to say how the whole future is going to be. We have a plan, right? And then the plan doesn't work. Often, I work as a facilitator. For about 20 years, I've been doing facilitation for social justice work. You're like, who is this girl anyway? So that's what I do. That's why I'm talking to you now, is that I've done that work, and that work showed me that a lot of people take their strategic plans. Back in the day when they used to print it out, now people just put it in a virtual file. But it used to be you'd print it out, and it would still go in a file cabinet somewhere. And we're like, we have a strategic plan, remember? And slowly people would forget, and then things would be nonlinear again like they normally are. And then they would come back like 5 years later and be like, let's do another strategic plan, right? So trying to get groups to let go of thinking that things are going to go linearly and get in tune with what really matters to us, our strategic intentions that need to be realized in every action that we do. What are the strategic intentions that will guide all of our work? So that we can be nonlinear, but also so that we can be iterative. Iterative means we're practicing, right? We're always practicing things. And what are some of the things you practice now that you would say are not aligned with your values? You can shout them out. Are you too ashamed? I'll just say this. I watch The Bachelorette. I practice it. Like, I watch it, and I know it's bad, and I know I don't agree with the values of it. The Kardashians, right? What? The Walking Dead. So, television, right? Like, we know that we should be spending that precious, miraculous life energy, feeding the hungry, but instead we're like, I need to sit on my couch and just watch other people's messy lives for a couple of hours or 3 days. Now that the binge watching is so deep. Okay, so paying taxes for some people, paying federal taxes for some people might be another one of those. What are other practices you're in? Shopping, just consuming this culture, right? So iterative practice says that if you want to be something different, you have to practice different things, right? Because you become what you do over and over and over again. And I think, for instance, one of the things I talk about often in the process of justice or trying to get to justice is that one of the major practices is that we lie all the time. Like, we lie at small scale levels and large scale levels. And we do it to make each other comfortable, right? We're like, I'm going to be polite. I don't want to disrupt anything. And then we end up in genocidal conditions for our people over and over again, either enacting it or being enacted upon, because we're too polite to disrupt the conditions. And then when people do, so I do a lot of work with Black Lives Matter and Movement for Black Lives, and it's so fascinating to see people be like, why do you have to be so loud and disruptive? And that was not, Bernie Sanders was talking, like these things happen. Real things happen, right? Where people are like, why are you being like this? And then what doesn't get noticed is, like, now we're having a conversation around the safety and well-being of Black people in this country that Black people have been trying to get politely for the last 40 years, right? So there's this question of, like, what do we practice? How do we practice interrupting? I was like, if everybody in this room interrupted racism every single time they saw it, like, what would be the wave of that? Would we still need to do these disruptive wake-up actions, right? So iteration, yeah? Then we talk about resilience. And I pay rent in Detroit, live in Detroit, love Detroit. And one of the things I talk about in Detroit is that resilience has been used kind of against us it's like, oh, you're so resilient. You don't need heat. You guys just bounce back. Like, we'll just take this water. It's fine, because these are resilient people. And so you're just like, oh, the harm keeps piling up, because you're like, we're strong. We survive. So I want to reframe or reclaim resilience. I really feel like resilience is our inheritance, that we can recover from harm, that we're on a planet that recovers from harm, and that we're of that, right? So I talked to my dad about this. My dad has chronic back pain, and I'm like, I think it's emotional. I think a lot of chronic pain is actually emotional. And my dad's like, what are you talking about? And so I said, well, the body, the human body, when harm happens, has like a 6 week to 6 month recovery time for most harm. So if something continues to act up, like his lower back or this spot on my neck, right? I'm like, what is the story, or what's being held in there that needs to be resolved, that needs to be let out, that needs to recover? I've actually been talking about this. I really think that so much of the chronic illness we're dealing with now is that we live in a society that is actually moving too fast and doing too much, where we are required to take in so much harm with no tools for how to navigate it, how to choose, like, where can I actually be of use? And so when that fire hydrant gets opened up and it's like, here's all the harms today. There's hurricanes, there's earthquakes, these people are at war, these people are being genocided, this person just got shot. All of this is just yesterday. That's just like one day of the human experience now. And we have the internet, so you can get the pictures, the sounds, you can see every single harm that has happened. And then maybe you'll be told you can sign a petition to help this, or maybe you can send a package. But it's not enough. Like, what we're able to do in response to the harm that we're seeing is not nearly enough. So it ends up overwhelming the system. So the place that I enter this now is in transformative justice. Is how do we actually say, what are the places where we can actually transform the conditions at their root, right? Where are the places where we can get our hands dirty, get in there, be transformed in this process of the work, and actually create transformation? It's meant that I've turned a lot of the news off. And, you know, I've always had a real feeling where, like, I have to be the most well-informed person at the table. Like, I always have to know all the things. And I've had to let that go. I'm like, I don't know. I can't take in all the things. I'm working very, very deeply on a few things, and I'm going to let myself be transformed by and transform those things and figure out how to transform them outside of the power of the state, because I don't trust the state. Because as we just all saw, no one knows how to do democracy, much less transformative justice at the state level. So what do we do? So, got it? So far, we're so good. The last piece of it is creates more possibilities. So in a military, so strategy, you know, when I was choosing to use the word strategy, it was a risk because strategy is a military term. It means a plan of action towards a goal. But people use it like it means something different. Like it means made of crystal brilliance. You know, so when people say, like, that person's so strategic, you know, what they're saying is, like, that person's better than you at thinking, so we're going to listen to what they said. And a lot of times that's tied into stuff, right? Men are more strategic. White people are more strategic. Consultants that are men and white people are the most strategic, right? So then you end up being like, oh, how do I find a strategic thinker to guide me, right? And trying to break out of that way of thinking, that also that strategy means narrowing down to one way and trying to eliminate the complexity, to eliminate all the variance and the diversity, right? So a lot of times how we're taught to be strategic is actually anti-nature or anti-natural. Then when you look at the natural operating systems of the world, it's all these fecund ecosystems that are incredibly biodiverse, and those are the healthiest, right? Those are the most likely to survive apocalyptic conditions. I'm like, humans should tap into that stream. That feels like it's working. Those dominant creatures where they try to make a monolith out of an area, tigers, lions, bears, the ones we love to sing about when we read The Wizard of Oz, right? The Wizard of Oz? Sorry. In my head, I was like, you know, every time you say lions and tigers and bears, it just has to be a Wizard of Oz moment, and that's just how it has to be. I'm born of a certain age. But this idea that those creatures that try to say, I will dominate, those are the ones that are going extinct, mostly because of our influence, but they're unable to adapt. The hierarchy is unable to adapt to what we're doing. But all these smaller, adaptive, biodiverse creatures that live on each other, bacteria, viruses, gnats, flies, roaches, they're super resilient. They're doing great. They're all like creating more possibilities. They're like, I can live anywhere. I can live in your walls. I don't care, right? It's all good with me. So I keep thinking of those little creatures and being like, how do we not be the roaches of the future? I mean, if that's what it takes, we don't want to think of ourselves that way. We're like, we're so superior to roaches. You know, they're disgusting. But I'm like, they're surviving. So anything on this planet that's surviving, I'm like, we need to give it a respectful examination, right? And those things that are surviving because they learn to collaborate in some way, or they surrender to collaboration. And not just collaborate in the funder sense of it, as like, we're collaborating, like we both put our names on the pamphlet, right? But collaboration, like, I just had an idea, and I'm going to let you into that idea as soon as possible so that we can be ideating together, that we're co-creating. And that the more people who co-create something, the more inclusive it actually is of all of us, yeah? So if you're in a space where it's like, there's no one with a wheelchair at the table, then often those spaces end up being like less accessible for people with wheelchairs, right? It doesn't mean there has to be someone with a wheelchair at the table, but it really increases the likelihood that it's going to be accessible if there's people there who are like, I know what you need to think about. As a woman, I know what you need to think about. As a queer person, I know what you need to think about, right? So creating more possibilities means inviting more people into the creation process and then surrendering your right way. You're not right. None of us are right. If we were right, we would be free, right? We're figuring it out. Okay, I've covered 2 of my pages. They're tiny little pages, so we're doing good. So I just want to say, when I do these talks, there's some stuff that I try to always share, like the basics of emergent strategy, and then there's some stuff that I leave up to like what's happening in the world right now and what does this room feel like. And I hope that y'all are going to be willing to do some play with each other, because I don't want to just talk at you. I have some stuff that I'd like you to do and build with each other. Are you down to do that? Okay, so I'm going to share probably about, that was a lot of enthusiasm back there. I'm excited now. I'm more excited than I was. So I'm going to share like 10 more minutes of thoughts to prep for that. But as you're listening, I want you to be thinking like, what of this is resonating with me? What of this is challenging me? Because that's going to come out in what you're going to do with each other. Okay? So a couple of pieces that I wrote down last night. Last night when I landed, I was like, I have to say this and I have to say this. One is letting go of hierarchy. It's like in order to choose all of us, we have to kind of relinquish our commitment to hierarchy. Octavia Butler taught us that the fatal flaw of our species is intelligence plus hierarchy, that we use all the reasoning power and the intelligence that we have to create dominant structures over and over again. And that if we are going to survive beyond this moment, we're going to have to learn to let go of those. And so I've been thinking, like, I'm pretty good at that. Like, I'm not in a bunch of hierarchies. But then I was like, no, but the hierarchy that I have had a hard time relinquishing is moral superiority. I really love being on a high horse. I do. Horses are beautiful. Horses are beautiful. But I also really love being like, oh, no, I'm right. I've got this. I figured this out. And one of the things that's helped me start to relinquish that is building an intersectional analysis, right? So when I just think of myself in one of the core lines of my oppression, for instance, if I only think of myself as black, then I can get on a very high horse, right? I'm like, I have been victimized. You are all wrong for victimizing me, and here's what happens next. And letting go of that moral superiority for me has meant being able to say, like, I'm intersectional. I'm black, but I'm also a woman. I'm also queer. I'm also amazingly thick-bodied. I mean, this body is incredible. And it's taken me a long time to know it was incredible, but, like, I've claimed it, right? I'm like, no, it's amazing. And I'm also college educated. I've also traveled around the entire world. I also get paid to do exactly what I love doing. So there's places in which I get harmed, and there's places in which I cause harm. And the sooner I can recognize my own complexity and my own contradictions, it allows me to step down off of that horse and be like, oh, we're all in this. And I think everyone needs to make those little maps for themselves. These are the ways that I currently benefit from the oppressions of society, and these are the ways that I'm impacted by them. And that no one has everything only on one side or the other side, right? Everyone has some mixture of both. And again, this is like, how do I see myself whole? You know? It requires a lot of trust in order to do this collaborative work, in order to heal and move forward. And after harm, that's the number one thing that's been broken, right? Trust in yourself. You know, I know as someone who's a survivor of sexual assault that, like, the first questions that I had for myself, and even now in this Me Too moment, other things have been unveiling. I'm like, oh, that was also a thing that, what the fuck? You know, like, all this has been happening. And the first thing is, like, how can I trust myself? I let myself be in that situation, even though I was a child. Or I let myself be in that situation, even though I had no idea, right? How can I trust myself? How can I trust anyone else? Is everyone else trying to harm me? You start to see the world this way. And now I work in the black organizing spaces. There's this new, you know, FBI has said there's a black identity extremist work, and there's all these things being planted to make us not trust each other, harmful things being thrown into the community. Harm always happens on multiple levels, right? So it's like, how do we actually start to regenerate and rebuild trust, even though all the evidence says we probably shouldn't, right? That's what it means to be a human being trying to create change right now. And it means we have to be willing to look past the surface actions, because a lot of times when people have done harm, they want to point to, like, here's something I can do in one day. I'll apologize, and I'll come out as gay if you're Kevin Spacey, right? Or, right? It's just like, here's the immediate, I mean, like, you know, for me, I keep looking at them like, yeah, that, of course that was not a good response, obviously. And I'm like, there's all these people making really bad responses right now to these accusations that are coming in because they're not actually taking time to move through a transformative justice process. They're not actually taking time to like sit down with the person that they harmed or the 60 people that they harmed and say, what happened? What did I do? Why did I do it? Let me examine this. Where's the harm in me? All of that process, we're skipping over that. We're just looking for the surface level actions. In your own work, in your own organizations, you have to resist this too. Because of the way our funding cycles work, how many of you are doing like nonprofit work explicitly, right? So because of the way these funding cycles work, it's like if a problem comes up, I need to finish handling this by the next time I go to apply for a grant, because this can't be like a problem, right? That doesn't create conditions that are conducive to healing and transformation, right? So there's 3 things I wanted to offer as practices I've been using as a facilitator and practices I've been using as a human being that I find really help to increase the capacity for transformative justice and transformative spaces. One, I learned as a doula. Y'all know what a doula is? Yeah? So I work with people who are like having babies to come out of their bodies. And I don't know if I'm ever going to do it, right? The more I see it, I'm like, what a miracle. Wow, that was terrifyingly awesome. You know, I mean, I think it's the best, and it's also like, I don't know if I can do that, but I have these moments of whenever I'm in the doula mode where I'm like, oh, engage tension, don't indulge drama. Engage tension, don't indulge drama. Tension is great. Tension means things are changing. New life is coming. The miracle is on the way, right? You have to bear down. You got to breathe through it, but like you don't want to stop. And there's almost always a moment in the birthing experience when the person who's giving birth looks at me or looks at the midwife or the doctor, whoever else is there. I can't do this. Actually, I'm going to go home now. I'm sorry that I took everyone's time, but actually this is not working for me right now, and I'm not doing it, right? And in that moment, you know, being present with that person of like, no, we're going to engage this tension. We're actually almost there, right? Something impossible is about to happen, and your body knows what to do. And if it doesn't know what to do, we got you. But we got to move forward. Back is not an option, right? So holding that principle when we're organizing people, when we're creating mediation processes for folks, it's like actually we want to engage the tension and not run from it, but don't indulge drama, right? So one of my early times being a doula, I'm working with the young mother who was having the baby, and her partner shows up, and he is high as a kite because he is 18 and he is out of his league with all this, and he's, I don't know what to do. So getting really high seemed to make sense to him in that moment, but it didn't make sense to her, right? She was like, like it was just like a huge sound of rage that came out of her, and it was like, what are we going to do right now? And I was like, that's drama. What he's bringing right now is a little bit of drama. He didn't mean to, right? He was just like, I'm trying to get through this experience. So we took him, and we're like, you're going to go sit in the waiting room and just let it come down, drink some water. You're going to send your friend home, your friend who you got high with and brought in like, hey, baby, that's going to go. We're going to not have that. And we're going to keep working and pushing in here, and then you're going to come back in. And he totally got it together. He came back in, and we engaged tension together, right? And I think about that so often, that experience, because both of them were like willing to keep showing up. She was like, okay, you can come back in. Are you good? Okay, you can come back in, right? She had to be willing in that moment to say, okay, you can come in. But we all had to be about engaging tension. And how many times in our organizational work and our healing work do we run away from the tension? Or do we turn away from the tension? It's too much. I don't want to deal with it right now. How do we instead get about engaging it? So you got that one? Engage tension. Don't indulge drama. The second one is engaging in principled struggle, right? This is connected. So I think a lot of times we love engaging in struggle, critiquing others, critiquing everyone, right? Telling everyone. I talk about this, that most of our college experiences are actually about training us in deconstruction, right? We get trained. Here's how you look at something and see what's wrong with it and, the lineage of what's wrong with it, right? This is a mess as far back as I can see. What we don't learn is how do we construct, how do we build, how do we co-create, how do we generate. Principled struggle to me is one of the ways that we say, I am in a struggle with you, But I'm not in a struggle with you because I want to tear you down. I'm in a struggle with you because I want to build you up. I'm in a struggle with you because I want us to grow together. I learned this from my comrade Tanya Lee, who's at Left Roots, does incredible work as a facilitator and as a teacher. But it talks about how do you struggle for the sake of growth rather than struggling for the sake of tearing things apart? How do you recognize what are the right containers in which to do that healing? I always say when I sit down to start a mediation, I'm like, do both of you actually want to see something change here? Because if you don't, this is not actually that great of an idea, right? We can create boundaries without doing a whole mediation process. Mediation should be about, like, we want to move forward somehow. We want some clarity here. And I always talk about that. Is this the right container to even be doing that healing in? And then, how do you not go off and have side conversations, right? Principal struggle happens when it's all, let's look at each other face to face and have the conversation. Not, we had one conversation that was all a bunch of bullshit, and then we all went out in the hallway and we were like, yo, that's why this shit never works, because so-and-so, right? And we love doing this, right? We can all see so clearly the flaws of other people. We can see it so clear. I mean, I'm a Virgo, so I can see it like very, very clearly. But I think we all have this in us, right? This capacity to look at other people and be like, you should have done this, right? You should be like that. So principle struggle says there's a principle that I'm fighting for that I believe we're fighting for, and we're going to engage. The other piece of principle struggle that feels really important is we ask questions before we issue our critique. So it's not that you never get to issue a critique. And if you love issuing critique, it's coming. Don't worry, right? But that we ask these questions, or on the internet now, I say read the text first, because so often people like read the headline and they're like, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm like, wait, did you read? You didn't even look. You have to click through, right? Because the headline is not necessarily the piece. And a lot of times the headline isn't even what the writers often don't create the headlines for their pieces. So I'm like, click through, read the text, or in person, ask the question. It sounded like you just said something really racist. Can we talk about that, right? I want to engage you in it. I want to have a conversation, make sure I understand. Now, if it is racist, then I get to move into critique. Yay, right? But sometimes it's like, oh, a person had no idea what they just said, right? They need to learn, and you're going to teach them. Yeah? The third thing is connected to that. Transform yourself to transform the world. I learned this from Grace Lee Boggs, who I had the honor of being mentored by in Detroit. She was a Chinese-American activist, married into the Black Power movement, and just did incredible work. She has books that you should read. She has an autobiography called Living for Change. And her latest book was The Next American Revolution. And she passed away 2 years ago after reaching 100 years and 100 days old. And she's very much a part of the lineage of this work. But one of the things she taught us was transform yourself to transform the world. And I remember when I first heard this, I was like, it can't happen at an individual level. Like, that doesn't matter. But then when I understood what she was saying, that each of us is carrying, like, the parts of this harm inside of us. I'm an anti-capitalist who's walking around with a shopping problem, right? Like, when I get really sad, I need to go on ASOS and buy myself a new skirt. And I'm like, that's not helping me be less sad. What is happening here? What do I need to transform to make myself feel abundance in my life without having to consume, right? That's one thing. I could tell you 50 more things. I'm so contradictory, right? And I'm working on all of them. And I'm trying to see all of them. How do I transform myself? When we're trying to think about doing this work out in the world, again, it's so easy to point the fingers. And it's so much harder to say, how do I shift this in myself and begin to embody something so compelling, it's irresistible, yeah? So that when someone meets me, I don't have to critique them. I just have to embody something that's liberated and free and whole, yeah? What does that actually look like to practice? Those three things I have found in most mediations will get us through. If we can engage the tension, be in principled struggle, and then be willing to self-transform and commit to self-transforming, that will get people through. If people are not down to do that, they're not actually wanting, they're just like, they want to seem to have done the right thing. We have to stop seeming to do the right thing if we're going to survive, I think, as a species. All of our seeming to do stuff is like plastic, and we need to be back to the dirt. Does that make sense? So I'm going to ask you all now to be thinking about a few things. And I want you to think about them with others. So we're going to do a little playing with each other. So what I want to ask you to do is find the nearest stranger. And I'm going to count from 5 down to 1. And here's, before you move, before you get going, I know my overachievers are like, I got it, I see a stranger. Awesome, right? So here's what I want you to do, is you're going to move your chair and turn your chairs so that you're sitting heart to heart, face to face, knee to knee, okay? That's what I mean by found a stranger. You're not going to say words. You're going to keep your mouth shut so that you can hear me. It'll just be easier to give the instructions. And when I tell you to, you'll talk. So I'm going to count from 5 to 1, find a stranger, and set yourself up. 5. That's going to be hard for you, Kelly. 4. 3. 2. Raise your hand if you need a stranger. Find each other. It could be a near stranger if you're really struggling, but just keep looking. Find each other with your raised hands. There's a few more raised hands. Look across the room. Some enchanted evening, you will see a stranger. All right, this is your stranger. So, a lot of times when we come to these conferences, we're trying to sit down with someone and basically make an impression that includes like our resume, our entire history as a human being, everything we're smart and good at, the major questions of our lives, and whether we're available for dating, like all in the first 2 minutes or so of the interaction. And I want to let all that fall away, and I'm just going to make it awkward for a few minutes. So I'm going to ask you to give this person your attention. If it's not in your cultural practice or does not feel comfortable to make eye contact, go for the forehead, go for the clavicle. Don't look up to the ceiling and don't look at me, right? Really tune in to this other person in whatever way you can. And what you're looking for, and if you can make eye contact, by all means, go for it. Just balls out, okay? Just go for it. You can do this. And I believe in you. I believe that you can do this. So the first feelings you might have are just like awkward, I want to laugh, or I want to talk. And what I want to ask you to do is see if you can drop under that. Keep looking at each other. I see some of you looking at me. I'll still be here looking fantastic afterwards. I always will, I promise, until I'm not. So tune into this person in front of you, eye contact or total attention. And what I want you to do is just, this person doesn't have to prove anything to you. They don't have to earn your respect. They already have it. Just resting into the fact that out of all the things this person could be doing in the world, they have chosen intentionally to try to reduce the harm that our species causes to each other. They have chosen to try to increase the transformation, the safety, and the love that exists in the world, right? They're doing this not just for themselves, because they could just be like, I'm going to go sit on a beach somewhere and I'm just going to feel the love for myself forever. But they chose to come to a cold place, right? And sit in a room full of other people, some of whom they don't know, and just get present. Get present and be grateful for this person. And understand, like, oh, they've got this whole life behind them. First of all, billions of years of DNA went into creating this perfect person. This miraculous being whose heart is beating, whose lungs are functioning, who loves people and who is loved by people. All of that is true. Even if they don't tell you the stories of all of it, that's already true. This is just this divine being and a shape changer. This person has changed and changed and changed in ways you cannot imagine. They were 1 month old once, right? Somebody had to love them past that. Somebody fed them. They were the most precious thing in the world to somebody. Someone helped them learn to say hello, to say I love you. And at a certain point, they started finding a path. And that path led them to you right now. So you can, right, always choose the level at which you're going to engage this person. Like, am I going to be a real person right now? I can. Or I can put on whatever my projection is and try to impress. So you get a choice. Choose your own adventure. And what I want you to try here is choosing yourself, like choosing full acceptance. Like I am good as I am. Like I'm trying to create change, but I'm really good right now. And what I'm doing is important right now. I'm proud of it, and I want to share it, right? That's the energy I want to invite you into with each other. And this is going beyond the random circumstances of your birth. So you guys, I think it's totally fine to kind of look at each other and be like, here's some assumptions I might be making about you, right? Based on what I'm seeing on the external. Your hair is a certain way. You're wearing a certain hat, right? You've got on functional shoes, or you got on some things, right? But then there's also just the random circumstances of your birth, which is how I speak about, right? How we get gendered, how our abilities get measured, what race and sex constructs set us up for. How have we found ourselves along the journey of that? Because we don't choose which bodies we come out of. But the bodies we come out of set up so much about how we're going to be and who we get to be in the world. So also seeing, can you let the assumptions fall away and be like, I don't actually know about this person's life yet, no matter what I think. And I want you to share with each other, here's how I've been choosing myself, and here's how I've been choosing my people. Here's how I've been choosing all of me, and here's how I've been choosing my people. I'm going to say the person with the shortest hair is going to go first. Got it? Everybody got it? All right, I'm going to time you. You're going to get 2 minutes each way. So I'll just go time, and then I'll say switch, and it'll be 2 minutes later in life and time, and you'll have spent it sharing about yourself. Ready? Are you ready? So the questions are, here's how I have been choosing all of myself, and here's how I've been choosing all of my people, right? And that might be like, here's the work I've been doing to do that. That might be like, I've been meditating every morning and taking long baths, right? The full range. Show how you're already choosing yourself. Got it? All right, 2 minutes. Little short hair person. Go ahead. About 30 seconds left. All right. Time. Switch to the long-haired person. Long-haired person. 2 minutes begin now. How are you choosing all of you? You're doing good. About 30 seconds. That's time. That's time. So if you have long hair, just close your mouth. If you're the long-haired person, just close your mouth. And if you see people still talking around you, just give them a little shameful, like a little light shameful face, like, come on now. Adrienne said to close your mouth. Yes, you. Even you, right? So I often laugh about these things, but it's one of the ways, the subtle, small ways that we practice dominance is in how we take up space and how we share space with others. Like, my story is more important, so I need more time than anyone else here to tell it or whatever, right? So just like noticing that. And again, no harm, no foul, right? Just noticing like, oh, yeah, I did really want to finish my story and it does need time. And my thing is like, make a lunch date, right? So here's the other piece that I'm going to ask you all to share with each other. And this one is going to be a little bit more free-ranging. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to just share between the two of you. And here's what I want you to talk about. What are the toxic systems that I'm trying to relinquish or eliminate in my own life? And how is that going to shape how I show up for this conference, right? What are the toxic systems I'm trying to relinquish or eradicate in my own life? And how is that going to show up in how I am at this conference? Got it? Yeah? Good question? No. It's a hard one. I was like, let's struggle with it. And it might, so just as an example, it could look like I'm trying to undo patriarchy, right? So when I'm facilitating spaces in the system, I'm going to make sure to hold a real balance and have leadership from the women of center voices in the room, right? That might be a practice that you're being, or it might be something else, right? Ready? Everyone understand the question? Yeah? Okay, 5 minutes. Goes. Back and forth, just conversation. Okay. You're about halfway through the time. Yeah. I love getting people. You live in Detroit? I always tell people, like, I'm there on purpose. Tell people about it. Yeah. I've got some. They took care of me. Thank you. I've been like slowly drinking all of it. I'm going to grab all of it now.
So where did you grow up? Well, you said military, so all of it.
Germany, Georgia, Pennsylvania, born in Texas.
Army, Navy,
And it was
in the Navy, all over the
yeah. You just do, you know. It's like now this is what I'm used to. So it's so when I meet people that it's like, wow, that seems exotic and strange.
talk about not wanting to change.
Yeah.
When you live in the same house.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm set up for it. I'm like, oh, you move.
Yeah, you move.
Exactly. All right. Time. And if you can hear the sound of my voice, just close your mouth. Take a deep breath in. Let it out. And again, a lot of times we're taught to immediately be second guessing ourselves, or we get this little backwash, like I either share too much or too little or not the right thing. So I want you to both just look at each other now and just yes, that was great. Whatever you shared, I affirm it, I welcome it, it worked for me, right? And this is someone you can stay in touch with over the course of the conference, right? And you can keep checking back in and be like, hey, I said I was going to be disrupting this, oppressive system during this conference, and it's day 2, and I did pretty good. I'm like at a 70% of what I thought I was going to do, right? Or I'm not, right? I'm at 30, and I just, I think I could do better, right? Every moment is a moment. If you can come into a realistic assessment of here's how I'm actually doing, you can transform that moment. You can transform how you're going to be in that moment, right? So good job. And I think it's necessary. These are the kind of conversations I want people to get more and more into more quickly in a relationship, right? It's like, hi, my name is Adrienne. I'm here to heal the legacy of sexual trauma and racism in my lifetime. What are you about? I also like long walks on the beach, right? And like recognizing a lifetime is a long time and you don't know how long you get. I've had this has been a season of devastation. So many people have died unexpectedly in the past few months, and I have been grieving and supporting the grief processes of others. And also one of the things I'm noticing as I watch people fly away, flock into ancestor land, is it matters to me how people felt about how they were doing in their lives, right? Like I notice if people left and I was like, they did what they came to do. They were proud of what they were doing. They were feeling satisfied by it and in the right work. I can release them more easily. I'm like, they came and they did what they needed to do. And then if I'm like, oh, that person was almost there, or they wanted to do this other justice thing and they just didn't quite get over there, it makes me grieve so much harder. And so it's something I want to constantly be an invitation to also, is like, don't waste any time. Do not waste any time. Justice is right this moment, available all the time to you and how you personally practice. And then what you personally practice generates what a community can collectively practice, right? So to close us out, I just want to say 3 things. One is that we all have the right to take up space. I think sometimes as we're trying to shift the narratives of harm, we start to think we need to shrink ourselves and shrink away from our wholeness in order to not cause impact. And I actually think the opposite is the case. We need to really impact each other a lot with the reality of who we are, with how we are, right? So I want to invite you all to take up all the space that is yours. Not more than that, right? But definitely not less than that. We need people who are committed to justice to occupy their fullness. Right? The second thing, we're tasked by an amazing writer named Toni Cade Bambara with making the revolution irresistible. So I really think about this question all the time, is how can we find the pleasure in our togetherness, the pleasure in our connection? The next book I'm working on is called Pleasure Activism, and it's about how do we make justice the most pleasurable experience we can have, right? And I really mean that. I'm like, oh, how do we enjoy this instead of horrible meetings where we all sit there wishing something else was happening and we're wasting our time, and it's just like, that was exactly it right there. That, right? How do we avoid that? How do we deepen into like, oh, I'm really glad to be here. I like the people I work with. I like the work that we're up to. I believe that we're doing it the right way, and I'm enjoying my days, right? Like, don't waste your entire work day for your life. You're going to be working a lot. Those are most of your waking hours. Find something that actually nourishes you and is a pleasure to you and brings justice to the world. Yeah? And then the third thing is get to it now, right? Get to it now. Go talk to your families. Go talk to your loved ones. Let everybody know this is what I'm about, and I'm doing it today. Yeah, it's not a plan that's going to happen down the line or down the road. I think a lot of people are like, oh, and if we just get this, and then in 2020, then we'll do this. Right now, today, there's no time to waste. Thank you. So that's my talking part. Don't clap. That's the talking part. No, because I thought we could do some Q and A, but mostly like A and A or T and A, which means in my context, that's not what I meant, but it means thoughts and answers, right? So thoughts. You're like, but thoughts could also mean something. Okay, so what it means is if you have thoughts, reflections, questions, anything that you would like to say now in front of the room, this is the time for it. And then if it's something that you have that you want me to answer, I can also answer. There's some microphones up here, and I don't know if there's some more. There's some whole process. There's some right here. I was like, I got mics. All right. So what's the best way? Do you want, Yada, you want to bring it to people? Okay. Raise your hand if you have a reflection, a thought, or a question. Or take a bathroom break. Also all good. But I will be here for a few more minutes. Awesome. Hi.
So happy that you're here. Day made, life made, maybe a little bit.
How are you?
My question / thought is, so you talk in Emergent strategy about flocking to the ball. What are some tips that you have for a community that maybe is small and stretched really thin, and people are often working towards multiple causes for multiple organizations all the time? What's your advice about determining where the ball is?
Determining where the
when we talk about like flocking to a point, like a flash
Mexico.
point.
Where's our Mexico?
Yes,
yeah.
Like what would your advice be for helping a group like that determine consensus on where the point of the most, like tension that needs to be engaged is?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that people do, right? They don't always need to find one purpose or one point in a group. I think sometimes people, I would ask people instead, why are you coming together? What do we need from this togetherness? Because sometimes it's we're all working on different things and we want to keep doing that, but we need this. So I just was at a group of Black healers. We went off to Hawaii. One of them was like, I live in Hawaii. Do you guys want to come here? And we're all Black healers who are all doing very different work. I'm like, I do organizational healing, and someone's doing body work and all this different stuff. And we're like, we don't need to all get on the same path, but we all do need sacred venting space, right? We need some space where we can come together and just release valve the things that we can't say to our clients and we can't say about our clients in most spaces. And we came together, we started doing that, and then all these brilliant solutions and alternative actions and all this stuff started flowing forward. And it was like, oh, this is what we actually needed the togetherness for. So I often ask that question. It's why is the group coming together? If it's a group that's we're a small group of people in a small town, I think there's something about where can we have the most impact, right? So I often ask people, and looking at a few different levels, there's legislative impact, which I'm not a huge believer in, right? I'm I would much rather see practice that moves up into being legislated rather than legislation that we fight for and then hope it's going to trickle down into practice. I very rarely see it go that way. Usually it's flowing up. I think of gay marriage as an interesting one where it's gay people were already being committed to each other, coming out very publicly about it, moving into the culture of television and other spaces where it was getting normalized, and then finally some legislation comes through that's and also, the state will acknowledge this in some places or whatever. But I was by that point, for me, I was kind of you don't dictate whether I love or don't love or commit or don't commit. Those practices were already happening and growing upward. Yeah. So I think about that in the community too. Is are there things that we want to turn up and grow upward? But I think sometimes communities, truncate what they are capable of because they try to get a singular agenda point or a singular thing too early in the process. That piece in the book, and I will talk about this in the facilitation workshop, but moving at the speed of trust is a big part of emergent strategy. And usually, if a group has developed enough trust, hi cameraman. Hey, how's it going over there? Usually, if people are moving at the speed of trust, it becomes clear where the focal point needs to be. And people can make moves then of being I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of the time I'm doing on my thing because your thing is more important and you need it. But that only comes through trust, and that takes time. I often will tell people, make a study group or something together where you're reading things and developing some shared analysis and some shared sense of the world. But there's a quote that I love that I keep saying all the time, and I think it's in the book. It's Loretta Ross, and it's a group of people thinking the same thing and moving in the same direction as a cult. But a group of people thinking different things and moving in the same direction is a movement. And I think that's the piece is how do we first start to come together and share the different things we're thinking of, and then let the trust be the thing that guides us in what is the direction that can emerge out of that. Yeah. Also playing with Venn diagrams, drawing some Venn diagrams will really help. It's what are the overlapping points? Anyway, all of that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That's a good question. Or thought. Question, thought. Question. All right. Anyone else? Yes. Oh, okay. It's happening. So I'll tell you this as we're waiting for this next thing. Right after the election, I took off my glasses, which I actually really need. And I was just I can't. I can't handle looking at anything. If I can't see it with my naked eye, then I just can't deal. And it's been kind of an amazing year of just being I can't see anything. I mean, I can see you, right here, but there's a lot of blur for me. And my mom, I was just home with my parents, and they were like, no, you're not one of those people. You're not one of those people who can just kind of see well enough to wear glasses sometimes. You really can't see. And I was I know, but this whole year has felt so much more clear for me politically, clear for me spiritually than I can even begin to explain. So yesterday I was maybe it's time to put my glasses back on. Now I feel I've gotten my other ways of seeing turned up. But anyway, so when I'm looking around, I'm is there a question? I really can't tell if anyone's raising their hand or not. So.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, despite not seeing me.
Hi.
Hi. So a bit of a shameless plug, so I apologize.
Yay.
But your your messaging is just resonating with me.
Good.
To let people know we have a Medicaid for Idaho table out here.
Yay!
Yeah, because we're not feeling as though our legislature is really hearing people, so we're trying to get a ballot initiative for the November election of next year to put it to the vote. So if
That's
you
great.
could sign on at this point, we don't quite have the crafted the language yet, but so much of what you're talking about is just
Shows up in that work.
I liked your shared sense of the world, so thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And visit us, please.
And come
Thanks.
visit. And you're looking for people to come and sign up?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good.
Sign up to help get tons of signatures around the state in
Yeah.
order to get this on the ballot next November. It's going to be a
Awesome.
lofty goal, but we're going to try.
That's what organizing is all about.
Yes, so thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you very much. Your last point, get to it now.
Yes.
We live upstate in the other part of the state,
Okay.
in the north. And when feels like we're overwhelmed with so much that needs to be done on
Yes.
so many various levels.
Yes.
And it feels like in constant motion and
Yes.
doing it.
Yeah.
And sometimes treading water.
Yeah.
How do we know? How can we really assess, besides coming together like this and with our own community, what to get to now
That's
when
so
everything
good.
feels like it needs to be gotten to?
That's so good. This is one of my favorite things for organizers. Two things jump to mind. One is learning to say no, right? And learning to feel no, more importantly. So again, this piece around being polite and not wanting to cause harm to people often leads us to say yeses that are not true yeses, right? Like, I just had this experience the other day where someone called me. They're like, this person who's in our community is having a breakdown, and we need you to help. And I had just spent the week doing grief support for someone else that I love, and I was like, I really don't have it to give. And I have overridden that feeling for so long that usually when I have that feeling, I'm just like, just push through. This person needs you, and it activates my hero tendencies. It activates my I can save the world, I can save this person, all this stuff taps in. And instead I was like, I don't think I have it to give. Right? I just have nothing left. Like, I have emptied the well. I need to refill the well, right? But I felt the no, and I actually let the no come out through my mouth. And it's awkward. I still fumble with no. Like, I'm really good at yes. I'm like, yes, yes. Even when I'm like, I will say an enthusiastic yes sometimes when I'm like, oh, inside. So I think that no often says where your energy is actually flowing. And I think the best work happens when your energy is flowing in a yes way towards the work that's being asked. And that yes might come from, I'm capable of doing this. I can see that there's a clear way I can have impact. We do so much work on things where we know we're not going to have any impact, but it just feels like the right thing to do. And I'm not sure that it makes sense I feel like that's wasted chi, wasted energy, it's a wasted flow. And as opposed to, often, I can have impact because I am impacted by this. I think a lot of times when people are doing like ally work, I'm like, what actually are you impacted by, and what are you actually impacting, right? That moves you from ally into solidarity realm, right? Into like, oh, I actually am like, I'm a part of causing this harm, and let me figure out how I undo it. Or I'm directly impacted by this harm, and I need to undo it, rather than there's right and wrong, and I need to do all the things that are on the side of right and stop all the things on the side of wrong. So that first one is feeling your no, having a really clear sense of what makes sense based on your circumstances to get involved in. And then I think making sure that there's a sense of longevity. So it's like we're in a long arc that is going to continue. It started long before we came onto this planet. It's going to continue hopefully long after. And so letting go of the ego that feeds urgency, that says, oh, right now in my lifetime, we have to do all these things. It's like, I think about, again, slaves in the middle of slavery, when slavery was all they had known and all that there was going to be for 3 or 4 generations still to come. Those people didn't stop fighting. They didn't stop slipping poison into master's food or teaching their kids to read or trying to escape, right? All of that was useful, necessary action that they were figuring out. I think of us sometimes in that, where I'm like, we don't know where we are. Grace always asks us, what time is it on the clock of the universe? Like, get in touch with where we are in that larger arc. And usually when you sort of look at it like, oh, like in Detroit, there's so many things we could work on, but water has continuously been one that we all keep kind of coming back to or organizing and centering ourselves around. It's like, of all the many, many things, water touches into all of them. It's finding like what is that thing that touches into everything and is the right time for the universe of the place where you are. Does that make sense? Yeah. But say no. Can we all practice that right now? It's just no.
No.
I can't right now. You know, I'm too tired. Right? No is a complete sentence. No doesn't need like a further explanation, actually. Right? It's just not a yes. And learning to hear no, I just want to say that too, like learning to hear from other people. So just all look at someone else and say no and hear it. No. Right? No. Yeah? I'm just such a huge fan of this because if you imagine that, you guys are loving it, yeah? No makes way for yes. No makes way for authenticity. Yeah? Good. Oh, there's a person over there, I think. See? I don't need glasses.
Hello.
Hello.
Can everybody?
I think I even like your pants.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. I think they looks bright. Awesome.
Thank you. So,
Yes.
I'm Cleo. I go to Sage International. We're the high schoolers here.
Uh-oh. Okay, y'all are rolling real deep right now.
Yeah, we're doing
Hi, all of you.
Okay, and I just wanted to say, so I'm 17, and I'm a feminist and trying to enact change, but
Okay.
it's hard because I'm a human and not a
Yeah.
magic fairy with a wand. And
Okay.
yeah. So I'm working on speaking my mind and stuff and finding an equalizer for all humans. And I've realized today, just by staring into my stranger's soul,
Yes.
that everybody is just a human. And we're all going to live and we're all going to die. And we're all at that same stage in our life where we're trying to figure out what to do next, which I thought was kind of only a teenager's thing because I'm 17 and I have no idea what I would do with my
Honey,
life.
I'm 39. We don't
yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, I realized, like, we're not going to figure it out, and it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I often say is that humans are trash and humans are miraculous. And both of those things are always true, right? That we are the best and worst of times for ourselves and each other. And my mom and I were just talking about this. She's 61, 62. I think she's about to turn 62. And she's like, yeah, I still feel like, I don't know, I'm still figuring stuff out. And I was like, me too. I thought that by now it would be like, and there's some stuff I definitely have figured out about like dating and still not, we were just, I mean, like not the good things. I'm just like, I have figured out some of the things to avoid. Or, you know, being myself without apology often is awkward and bumpy and requires like, you know, messiness. But for the most part, I'm still kind of like, if I look up at the stars or if I look up at the large scale of harm in the world, I get overwhelmed still. And I'm like, I don't know if this is going to make a difference. But fractal, if I notice one other person and really tune in, I'm just like, oh, you're just of my species, and we're just figuring this out. It's going to be a long time figuring it out. And I'll say this, I'm not a fan of heaven or utopias. I don't want to stop figuring it out. Like, I don't want to be sitting on a cloud playing a lute for eternity. I'm just like, I like problem solving. I like getting in and figuring things out and co-creating and being messy. And like, I want to keep doing that. So it's once you start to tune in to like, oh, I'm shaping change, it all gets really interesting. I can say that. It doesn't get clearer, but it does get more fun. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your life.
Thank you. You too.
Awesome. So we have time for like 2 more things from audience with things from Adrienne. I see a hand. See? I totally don't need glasses. This is so affirming for me. I can see. I shouldn't drive, but I can see.
I just have one comment to make. When
Yes.
this morning we had a very well-known female politician being derogatory by our, I guess you'd say, our leader of our country, poking a joke because of her Native American lineage.
Oh, wow.
And then everyone saying, oh, it's not racism, it's nothing. So no one saying no.
No, exactly.
No one raising a voice to say, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And with all the, which is good, the sexual harassment coming to light, but yet ignoring, the S-word names that we still want to say, well, that's our tradition.
Yep.
And that is, to me, the disgusting thing that promote racism ongoing.
Yeah.
So that's just one comment.
Absolutely.
That
right?
I think if we don't like it, we need to say, no, enough is
Exactly.
enough.
Right? Like, this is what I mean by that letting go of being polite in those moments. I wrote this thing. Actually, let me see if I can find it. I brought up my phone in case I was like, my brain doesn't always remember all the things that are happening. But I wrote this thing heading into the holidays because I think the holidays, are this time when like all the stuff kind of comes to the surface. Like, my family caused me harm. I love my family. I don't want to participate in this colonial imperialist celebration. This is the only week my family has off. I have to confront them on all of their racism and sexism. I'm tired. This is supposed to be my break. Everything is like coming together. And so I was saying to people, like, what's the holiday how-to, right? Like, how do we move through and actually disrupt the things that need to be disrupted? So I came up with this little quick formula, which I put on the internet. Be kind, speak from the heart, be principled, look back through time to the wound and forward to the medicine. Time is a circle, right? It's all there together. Ask curious questions when you feel an assumption coming. Listen to the answers with a soft face. Only interrupt ignorance. Stay connected, stay wide. Look for the best and invite it to be brighter. Be an irresistible invitation to the future. And I think that piece around like interrupting ignorance is maybe the number one skill set we need to learn how to do, right? It's just to be like, no. And I think that's how we have the president we have right now, is that so many people are like, like, that's a person who got too many passes, right? That's the only way you get to be an adult man who behaves this way. So it's like, how do we intervene? And I never plan to talk to him, but there's a lot of men I meet that have those tendencies, and I interrupt them. And I'm starting to interrupt men who stop me on the street or try to talk to me, where someone's like, hey, you look really beautiful. And it's like, no, I think I just look like I'm trying to spend some time by myself with my headphones on, going for a walk, And it's just interesting to be like, oh, how do I interrupt those things in a way that, for me, will often employ humor, but also, keeps my safety intact. But also, it's like, no, I have the right to take up space here, and your racism doesn't, right? I also want to make this distinction, is pulling apart behavior from person. And I think, I keep saying this, I'm like, we do trash things, we do harmful things, but we are not the harm ourselves. We are not the wound, right? We are the wounded. And when people are the ones who are creating those wounds, I think they can think they're not the wounded. But the only reason you would do that to others is because you're wounded, right? So we all need medicine, and I think we are each other's medicine. So thank y'all so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Let's give a warm, warm thank you to Adrienne Maree Brown for such a thought-provoking and very inspiring morning. Now we have a 15-minute break. We invite you to look at the tables and sign off on the Medicaid. Take your time going through to workshops. If you're having problems, just reach out to any staff that have little red ribbons.
I just have a couple of announcements real quick. So please make sure that you're taking care of yourself. We have a wonderful space. It's the Restorative Self-Care and Healing Room. Please go visit. If you go straight down to the end of the hallway and turn a left, they have massage, Reiki, essential oils, crystals, all the things you need to take care of yourself, and beautiful facilitators, Marisela Rios and Kristen Harwood, who are facilitating. Workshops start at 10:45. Please let us know if you need help. And stay hydrated. Thank you, everyone.